Welcome to the Forever Classic Podcast. I'm Alex McCumbers, and today we're going to get a little stylish. And who better to talk about fashion than three guys with arguably none? So I introduce our good friends and esteemed colleagues, Mr. Joseph Simpson.
That's me.
And Mr. Zack Snyder.
Hey guys.
All right, so gentlemen, today I come before you to talk about something that we know nothing in the real world, I would argue, and possibly a lot of things in the video game world, but we'll get to that shortly. For now, hey man, this is the Forever Classic Podcast, and we've got a lot of cool stuff going on. But Joe, tell us how people can support us if they choose to.
Oh man, support us? That'd be lovely. If you like what we're doing here at Forever Classic Games, whether it's the podcast, whether it's the reviews or the feature articles and opinion pieces, or our YouTube channel, which is kicking it off, or just the interactions we've put out there on social media, if you think we're doing some cool stuff, and in particularly ad-free, clutter-free, you can do so at our Patreon, Forever Classic Games on Patreon. And we also have it set up where if you like something that someone specifically on our team is doing, whether you want to commend Reese for kicking butt on editing some videos, or if Zach or Justin or someone writes a review that you really like, we've got tips set up so you can go and click, give them a few bucks, maybe buy them a cup of coffee or however they have it set up, and that'd be great. But as usual, the best way to support us is to just share our stuff. Subscribe on the YouTube, give us those hearts on Twitter, follow, recommend the podcast to your friends, leave a review of the podcast on your favorite podcatcher. And of course, you can reach out to us at any time at contact@foreverclassicgames.com and let us know how we're doing. Good, bad, everything in between. Or if you just want to ask us a question or whatever thoughts you may have, you have some input on a topic that we had, might bring it up in the next follow-up episode just to clarify and let you be a part of the experience. So definitely encourage you to engage with us. And of course, one of the best ways to engage with us is on our Discord channel, which was where a lot of our best conversations and sharing happened, whether it's the food we're eating, the games we're playing, our pets, or just dumb memes that we think are funny. We're always talking about movies and music and just
showing off what we cook.
A great place to just geek out.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of geeking out, it's a great transition into the Geek Peek.
Oh,
it's time for the Geek Peek, boys.
Who's peeking and who's geeking? We're all show of hands.
We're all peeking and geeking, my friends. Zach, I'm making you go first because I have no idea what three random letters together mean.
They're very important, three random letters. And that is EDH. That is what is today known as Commander in Magic the Gathering.
It's not Earth Defense Horse?
No, I think it used to be called Elder Dragon Hunter. I don't remember the full name of it.
It's not Electronic Dance Horse?
Wait, are people still referring to Commander as EDH at all, or is that an old defunct term?
It's just an overwritten term by Commander now.
Huh.
I mean, when I learned it as EDH, so that's the name that sticks with me.
See, we're retro in more than just games. Carry on.
I just started getting back into playing a bit more. So, Toast got a deck working on and kind of going. So we started playing a couple of games. We got a bunch of our buddies play in pods every Friday night. Unfortunately, and fortunately at the same time, I'm in Strahd games on Friday nights, so I don't get to go play that. But, it's just been kind of exciting with the new set of stuff and the new story. It's kind of bonkers. But the new story was probably the best part and is what reeled me back in, because the little stuff going on just cracked me up. I don't know, did you all ever get into any of the Magic story, of the stuff across the plains?
I've looked kind of hard at some novels before, but I haven't read any of them, and I've had people summarize it.
One time I bought a box and it came with a book I never read.
I got real into the Plane of Innistrad because it's got all the zombies, werewolves, vampires, ghosts, angels, and demons. It's the hot center of that sort of stuff.
Oh, sure.
But the new set is the invasion of the Phyrexian baddies on all the planes in the multiverse. So you get this a little like side story snippet of like each place that they're invading and how that place is either like falling or repelling them, and it's pretty funny. In particular, because big zombie fan, about anything zombie, I'll watch and get into it in some capacity.
Wait, you are?
Yeah.
Who knew?
Never
Based
was
on
guessed.
your play history.
But so on Innistrad, there's two siblings that are like psychopaths. They like try to kill mass sinners of humans for fun with their zombies, but they bicker with each other to see who's the better, like, quote unquote necromancer. So in the side story that like hooked me back into wanting to get into it again was
so they're just influencers.
they like, okay, so one creates zombies with his hands, like he flesh stitches stuff together and makes abominations.
No, gross.
The other one's like traditional necromancer. She raises dead things that can be raised, and then basically they make giant armies and make them fight, and then argue about who won, who did better.
Oh, so it's literally just Magic the Gathering.
Kinda, but I mean, occasionally they get bored and they're like, okay, let's see who can take over this city the fastest, take out the most people. So like she's just constantly like raising things as she's going, and he has his like hordes of stuff killing people and things and then running them back to him so he can like magic weld them back together into new things and send them out like a personal machine shop.
Folks, if you live in this land, move.
Yeah, they really should. But so come to find out, like they end up being the protectors of Innistrad. Like not by chance, they're just having one of their like mock battles, and Innistrad like pops up, or the Phyrexians pop in, and they're like, "The fuck is that? Who's that?" They're like, "Okay, you know what? This is getting a little out of hand. Let's not call it a truce, but we'll see who can take out the more of these fucking interlopers." And then just start like battering the Phyrexians with undead that they can't take and turn into their own things. So it turns out to be this like they popped out into the middle of two psychopaths that were like literally their like fucking absolute anti version of the thing that they ever wanted to run into.
It'd be like aliens invading Earth in the middle of World War II. Like everyone's already just weapons out, right? Facing towards each other, and then like aliens land in the middle. Like, oh, did we arrive at a bad time?
Is now a bad time? They're Americans.
World.
Yeah. But no, that's been my big geek this last like couple weeks, because I've been able to listen to narrators narrate the stories going to and from work. So
are these stories primarily happening through like card flavor text, or where's like the primary source?
So this newest set brought back the like they're releasing short stories from writers.
Okay.
So these have been like actual like writer written short stories for each little chapter, side story, whatever's going on in the overarching narrative. But they still have like, they call them their spotlight cards, like cards that have like the flavor and like main events that they focus on. But before this, for a long time, it's really only been told through like a little booklet, like maybe 5 short chapters, and then only spotlight stuff. So you had to kind of really fill in some gaps.
Okay.
But
because I've definitely seen a lot of the novels and stuff available, and I believe there's a couple comic series floating around.
Yeah, now the novels are great because it's like the story expanded on and then noveled out. Like that doesn't come with the set, so to speak. Like
I mean, it makes sense.
But some of them are great. Some of them are like meh to me. Just that's a writing preference sort of thing when I'm reading. But
I think the style really kind of is that like digestible sort of format that Wizards of the Coast has been pretty dominant in for a long time, because they also do a lot of the Forgotten Realms publishing.
Yeah. It's good. I would recommend getting into it. But I'm also like a very like, I like all this character stuff, and I like all this chaos, and all of this mixes together and becomes this random batch of fucking nonsense. And it's like perfect for me, because it's like, oh yeah, this one person, random person, became a planeswalker that only lived their entire life and knew anything about this one world they lived in, and now suddenly they're somewhere else and can go anywhere else feasibly.
It'd be super cool if we got like a movie or a big budget like cinematic game or something in the Magic universe. Because you could take the general framework of something like Jedi Fallen Order and just input Jace and add Magic World, and suddenly that's a pretty like compelling experience.
Yeah, I'd be down to get into it, but I don't know how I feel about it with, a Wizards and Hasbro over top of it at the moment.
Well, sure.
But that's it for my Geek Peek. That's where I've been, and I've been kind of like deep into the land of it. So we finally got back into building decks.
Cool. Well,
And
thanks for that
transition
peek at
off
your
of
geek.
Storytelling.
What about you, Alex?
Well, since yours is also storytelling, let's go to you next.
Fair enough. It's been almost 10 years now that I discovered Brandon Sanderson as an author. Started with the first couple of Mistborn books, and then for some reason just sat on the third book until about a couple weeks ago. I've had the audiobooks for a while, and with that, I've finally finished the third one. So I finished the Mistborn trilogy. Outside of this, I have kept up to date on his Stormlight archive and a couple of other of his side stories. But finishing his first trilogy and kind of now getting a bigger idea of his like scope and overall plan based off this first book. But even then, like, it holds up really well as just like its self-contained trilogy. It's not until later, with context of later things, that you start to see this bigger picture that he started forming all the way back when he was writing these first few books. And it's this third book in particular I found to be one of the best character explorations of crisis of faith. There's a character who like has faith, that faith is shattered, and like how they move forward in life and how they explore that. And some of the central themes of the whole trilogy kind of like come together towards the end in this exploration of like, I discovered that my faith isn't real. Is any faith real? And like the conclusions he comes to aren't necessarily what you think they might be, which I thought was like, it doesn't just like dismiss it, which is what I was sort of expecting it to do, which is because that sort of, it's easy to be like, well, this religion is a lie. I'm finding all religions are a lie. There is no value. Atheism. But that it doesn't take that turn. And I thought it was a really human and real look at faith. Someone who spent their whole life in faith and then suddenly was lost without it. There's also some great like character moments, side characters from the first two books come up into their own and become great characters in this one. And it's like this grim, dark fantasy world. The premise being there's a hero of ages and they were betrayed. So the hero failed. And the result was this dark ruler who rules this planet for 1,000 years. And this like small band of people, the small band of rebels, say, we're going to take this guy out. 1,000 years of this nonsense, we're done. And that's sort of the premise of it. And then on top of that, Brandon Sanderson is known for his magic systems in his book. And in this one, there are certain like powers related to digesting various metals. So you throw back a solution, like just water mixed with like filaments of different kinds of metals, and you can burn them inside of your body, which allows you to do things like soothe or push emotions of people around you, pull or push on different pieces of metal. And so really talented people with some of these powers can use them to like, they'll drop a coin on the ground and push against it, which then launches them up into the air. And so they can just keep throwing this money down as they go and then just like basically fly. Or the opposite, they can pull something towards them. And all these different powers, the way they come together is really, really cool. There's some horrific monsters, these inquisitors, that their powers are given to them by driving like metal spikes through their bodies, including their eyes. So they're just these like tall, gaunt men with spikes, iron spikes for eyes. Just freaking creepy the way they're described. And it's a pretty great trilogy though. And it's one of those things where like, not when I finished it, that emotional limbo when you finish a story. And this was the finishing of a trilogy. So it was like really the end of what that story was coming to. But yeah, if you haven't yet, if you're in the market for reading something and you haven't read Mistborn yet, definitely recommend. I believe it's the Hero of Ages, the Well of Ascension, and cannot remember the Final Empire. I don't remember which order those are in. I kind of wish they were labeled Mistborn 1, 2, and 3, but they're not. You kind of have to look it up.
That's super cool. I know magic systems in general is kind of how one can really discern sometimes, like the world building of a fantasy work, and people like Brent Weeks do awesome magic system, and Sanderson clearly, like, he's been working on it for, probably several decades by now, and has got that podcast where he talks about storytelling. Like, there's a lot of really cool work surrounding Sanderson. And
Stormlight Archive has got a bunch of different things, but one of the concepts is, in a lot of magic, like magic systems or fantasy realms, it's like there's like one or a few really powerful magical artifacts, and like how people will go on quests to get this artifact, like this magical sword or whatever. And in the Stormlight Archive, it's just like these magic swords are freaking everywhere. Like there's hundreds and hundreds of them. And how does that affect a culture and advancement of humans? And so like the currency among the nobility is these swords. Like power of a house or a kingdom is based off of the number of swords that they possess, and they will duel each other for these swords. So
that's interesting.
There's a whole lot more going on in those books than just that.
What if rich people fought over their fucking ape NFTs or something?
But yeah, it's one of those things too where like you can't the peasant class can't really fight back because these are literally, as described, they're razor sharp and can cut through anything.
Right.
And so they will just cut a person in half. Well, it doesn't cut the person in half. It cuts the soul from the body.
That's different. That's not what I was thinking about when you were explaining Magic Sword. I was like getting different mental images
but like,
for some reason.
If you use it on a stone, it'll just cut that completely in half as if there was nothing there.
So what you're telling me is that pet rocks are in danger in this world.
They are.
But when you were talking about sword, it just made me think of Dan Maki a bit, because they have magic swords, but they're like just a blacksmith just makes them. So there's a ton of them. They're just kind of expensive because they have to be handmade, and you can only use them so many times, and then they like just fucking shatter. Just and then you're just done. So when they have people dungeon delving, you've got one pack mule with like 17 magic swords strapped to them that's just like giving them to people.
No,
like, okay, here's the ice one, here's the lightning one, here's the earth one.
In this world, they are all recorded and documented and registered, and so they have to be bonded. And once they're bonded, you can like store them away, and you can like dismiss the blade so it disappears, and then you focus and you can re-summon the blade basically. And if you die, the blade just falls at your feet, able to be picked up by whoever comes along and grabs it and bonds with it next.
So the fact that they're all registered reminds me of a lot of opportunities for people to get involved with like fan creations. I mean, the SCP project in general is kind of based on that. They're just like, all right, what if there was this archive that had all these things, and then the users create this massive catalog and stuff, and the initial creator probably had so many. So I imagine there's a lot of fan fictions and stuff out there for that particular storyline.
Probably. But
speaking of user inputted things, oh, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, at this point, he's got 2 series in Mistborn. Then there's Stormlight Archive, which is on its 5th book, which I think nearly every one of those books in Stormlight is over 1,000 pages. Like, they're thick tomes. And he comes out with one like every other year. And then he's got like a couple of standalone novels, and then 1 or 2 more things that are all that he's writing and adding to constantly. And most of it is connected in some small way.
I definitely envy the work ethic and the publishing deal, because I mean it's truly impressive how many.
Well, actually, his everything that's coming up, if I remember correctly from his Kickstarter, as a result of his Kickstarter, it's all self-published.
Even better.
Oh,
so it's not even like he just realized that he had this following, and he was sick and tired of having to sell half of his rights away or whatever publishing deals end up being, took his work to Kickstarter and just crushed it. And now he just like writes full time based off of this Kickstarter and can self-publish his stuff.
That's awesome.
He's like, I don't need your money. I've got the money already. And he's like, I hope this will pave the way for other authors to do something similar. He's like, I could do it and take this risk because I already had money.
Mm-hmm.
If this failed, I would have been fine. Like, and it is a privilege, but I hope this shows publishers the power of its customers. They want what I'm writing, not what you're publishing.
Good point. Very, very good distinction.
He's got some like controversial things like with his religious background and things like that, but
I'm sure.
I would say that generally speaking, it does not show in his writing. And he's, unless directly confronted with a question, he's not like on Twitter all the time raging against certain groups of people or anything like that. But I can understand if his particular religious views turn some people off and you don't want to read him, but I think he's an excellent writer. And anytime I remember there's a panel he's on where with like George R.R. Martin, he's like, don't you, like, what do you do when you get writer's block? Don't you get writer's block? And Brandon Sanderson's like, no, my job is to write, so I write. If I'm stuck on something, I write something else and come back to it later. And that's why he has like 6 different book series that he's writing right now, because he gets stuck on something and chooses to write something else, and that turns into a whole new thing.
Yep. There's something to be said about
cool.
pursuing what interests you at the time. I get that.
But then there's something to be said about, I still have to finish the other 5 projects I started.
Right, which is the situations that I get into all the time.
Right. So, Alex, I'm excited about yours because I think I already talked about my Geek Peek on what you're talking about. So I'm excited to see your perspective on it.
All right, so I picked up a Steam Deck specifically for the general idea of like, there's a lot of indie games that I would love to get to that I just don't have the time for, and a lot of it comes down to I just don't want to sit at my desk. And if I can play it on the couch or play it in bed on a handheld, those are the sorts of games I spend the most time on now, especially now since my like, I can only handle looking at my PC for so long, right? Like, because I work 8 hours a day through Stride PR. And the other advantage here is that any client that we might have or something who's like got their game on PC and they're like, well, we hope it works on Steam Deck, I can throw it in my Steam Deck real quick and be like, yep, that works on Steam Deck. Or nope, you're probably going to want to put some time into that or whatever.
Right.
And so generally it becomes a work item for me because I can play all the games for Forever Classic. I can like make sure the client stuff works. So both my day job and my just passion project coincide with this. But generally I've been using it just out of the box. I haven't modified hardly anything in it. The only thing that I did is I put a anti-glare glass protector on it. And then I added thumbsticks because I felt the thumbsticks out of the box were just really like slick to touch. And so I kept like slipping off of them, even playing just RPGs and stuff. So I'm like, I gotta fix this.
You slimy, greasy little gremlin.
Dude, my hands are just naturally oily, I guess. I can pick up a magazine and it'll like run the ink in it immediately. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, because I haven't noticed anything like that with my experience. And I actually recently started picking up and playing Children of Morta on it.
Yeah,
which is pretty
which
action,
I bought, by the way.
Which is pretty action oriented. And so I haven't noticed my thumbsticks slipping at all, but again, I just don't seem to have much trouble with that anyway.
I find the grip to be a little awkward long term, but for a lot of games it's fine. And ultimately I will be picking up a dock for this thing. That way I can attach it to the TV or my desk or what have you, just like I do my Switch, because ultimately when we talked about this in the Switch episode is I just want the Switch but better. I don't care how I get it.
Yeah, from what I've seen, my recommendation would be so you're not constantly repairing controllers. Like if you got one for your desk, like an Xbox controller for your desk, you're probably going to want a separate one for your living room, just so you're not constantly having to repair it. So you want to be able to just hit that button and go and play, right?
That makes sense. And hopefully this will pair well really. Well, I hope it has good compatibility anyways with some of the controllers I have with the USB dongle, like the Retro Fighters ones. I really like that PlayStation one.
That one's Yeah, that would probably work, especially with your fight stick.
Yeah, the fight stick also, I could just hook it up, ready to roll. And I've played a
Oh.
couple fighting games on it. Like, compatibility is weird on the Steam Deck, and the whole reason that I'm hoping Valve will really lean into compatibility is the fact that the Steam Deck is one item across the board, and there's 3 different versions of it, and that's it. And they're pretty much the same, right? So developers can create a version of the game that works exceptionally well for that particular device. That's why PlayStation games that are made for PlayStation play exceptionally well and can be hit and miss when they come to PC
Yeah.
because it was made for PlayStation. So if developers have the opportunity to perfect their builds for the Steam Deck, that's a whole player base just knocked out. And it should make tinkering and figuring out the right resolutions and all that nonsense not a big a deal, because it should automatically just be like, here's the preferred Steam Deck settings, you're good to go. That's what I'm hoping. Some games have that already, not all of them do, but generally I find that playing titles from like the 2000s, 2010s that had PC versions, I'm talking like 360 games, PS3 titles that eventually made it to PC. So games like The Darkness 2 work surprisingly well, and
Fascinating.
Warhammer Space Marine, I played it for probably a couple hours, and that works just fine. And I'm really excited to sit down and play some other things with it, because I did just add emulators. But generally, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I wish that there were a little bit more things streamlined, because it does still feel like, in a lot of ways, this is testing the waters and trying to figure out what the Steam Deck ultimately will be. But there's updates constantly for this thing, so it's always improving. There's always some new setting to turn on that makes things better. And so hopefully, I think over time, this will be the premium way to play handheld PC titles, is my hope. We have a lot of competitors jumping into the space.
True. Like
so
the
many
Asus
handhelds.
ROG Ally coming out. I was not expecting that. I thought it was an April Fool's joke.
Yep, and they were like, hey, no fooling, we're doing it. And so there's a lot of opportunities, I think, for hardware manufacturers to really nail down the handheld device. But the fact that this is from Valve, it's a Steam product that is successful, and one that they seem very keen on supporting long term, based on, the right to repair support that they've done, all the different ways that you can buy it, the constant promotion of this thing. Like, I think this really has the potential to be a PC gaming device that I can use long term, like I would the Switch or something. And that's really exciting.
And what's cool about it, in a video I saw recently, Linus Tech Tips was reacting to questions on Twitter. And one of the questions or comments was, Linux gaming will never be mainstream, stop trying. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? Mm-hmm. The Steam Deck has sold millions of units, or at least over 1 million units, or something like that.
And it's based in Linux, right?
Yeah, he's like, it's based in Linux. It's happening right now. It's becoming mainstream. People are buying it, and it's going to happen. And all it took was someone with some clout to get behind it. And they used, and rather than try to strike some deal with Windows or create some new operating system, they already had SteamOS for their stuff, but they knew people might want some sort of compatibility stuff for doing some extra stuff. And so they paired it with Linux, which is what SteamOS is sort of driven out of. And it's kind of awkward, because you're trying to like run a computer at desktop mode with a controller or these little touch pads on it. But once you get used to it, I found it fairly intuitive for what the control scheme is. Right.
That's the one area that I struggle the most with, is jumping into desktop mode, because in order to open the virtual keyboard, and it doesn't do this automatically in most instances, you have to hold the Steam button and press the X button. But the X button is also the backspace button, so if you don't time it right, you just, all of your passwords are one character off.
There you go.
Which I find really funny, because if you use a controller on a computer and you have Steam open and you're not playing a game, if you touch the goddamn touchpad on the PlayStation controller, it opens, like force opens Steam Big Picture mode. And if you don't use the correct exit, you just shut Steam down.
Oh, yeah. It's, like I said, it's wonky, but if you're in just the main OS screen, and it took me forever to figure out how to just open the desktop mode, because I'm like, I know you can do weird shit with this, but it took a long time to just Google, like, how do I open this thing? how do I close this thing? How do I like download this? Or even transferring files, because it's a Linux system. You have to go through a particular program in order to get like your ROM files for emulation, and there's a lot of weird loops to go through. But it is the base model. Like, you don't jump into desktop very often. You're just using the base OS.
Yep.
That feels really, really nice, and it will only get better over time as compatibility increases. But generally, I found that pretty much anything with a basic compatibility rating will work. And 2000s games that, you know, took place in 720p, 1080p, at most, like,
Look great.
2K or whatever, and like all of those games look incredible, and they just feel immediately like correct.
And a vast majority of modern indie games look and feel pretty good on it too.
Yes, the indie scene has jumped on this hard, which is what I was hoping for, and what I'll probably play the most of. But even weird side story about Final Fantasy. There's unique features to the pixel remasters on consoles, and it's a $75 collection. But they haven't updated their Steam versions to include the new details, so it's like there's a weird disparity going on there.
Weird.
So it depends on what game you're playing. But generally, the Steam Deck is a very cool idea, and I hope that it gets better, because I really like the foundation they've established.
Yeah, I've had mine almost a month now, and I would say I've probably touched it probably daily. There's been a few days where I haven't had a chance to, or I was playing something else on something else, but I'm trying to play something on it almost every day. And the only like thing I've really noticed, and this might be particular to me or people with hands similar to mine, I've got fat palms. And so sometimes on the right hand more, because I'm moving that thumb a lot more than the left one. Just the inside of my palm, just under the thumb, that pad there sometimes touches the touchpad on the right side, and suddenly will activate something I didn't intend it to, or I'll feel it vibrate or whatever. So in some games I've had to deactivate it completely.
I'm glad the option exists.
Yeah, the customization on controls is pretty awesome. I've been able to go through and, like, for the first time I'm using the back paddles.
Yep. Which
I found to be somewhat hit and miss, because I find them kind of hard to hit. Like, to press. Like, I have to really try to press them.
A lot of people have gotten that textured sticker that you can put on it that just makes it... They do the same for the touchpads, because the whole...
For me, I think it's the
interface is kind of slick, just generally.
It's not necessarily that. I think it's just the angle that I have to, like, get the leverage to push it in. Like, I've got big hands, but I don't have very long fingers.
It's not a very ergonomically designed controller, in my opinion. And the Switch isn't either. But there's a reason that I use the Switch with the Hori split pad, because it's a more normal controller. It's got that, like, angle. So I don't know, generally, like, playing with it, sometimes I get the, like, hand cramps, but I like the interface and what they're going for enough to kind of power through it. But usually over the past, I've had it for maybe like 3 or 4. Well,
you got it like a week after I got mine.
So like 3 weeks or so I've had it. And I play it almost exactly like I do the Switch, and I interchange those depending on what I'm playing.
Yeah, I'll just sit down in bed and do a couple runs in a game, or make some progress in an RPG, and it's been great.
I'm really looking forward to PS2 emulation. I got Roddy Out of Stories to work, and outside of the beginning of the game, there was a weird texture glitch.
Oh, I haven't run into that.
Works beautifully.
That's cool. No, I've played around with some of the emulation. This might be my, like, digging back into Mother 3 again.
Yep.
Because it's going to look fantastic on that. The USB, because it's dockable, right, carries a video signal, and so my portable monitor works with it. So a couple of times I've just sat there with my portable monitor, which is 15 inches, which so more like double the size, just sitting there playing on the couch with a little tiny monitor, or a bigger monitor.
And you didn't need a dock for that. You just plugged in.
I just plugged it straight in.
USB-C,
I think it drains
whatever.
the battery faster, but
well, sure, that's
but it's fun.
That's an area, depending on what you're playing, mileage will vary. But the cool part about the Steam Deck generally is that a lot of the parts are interchangeable. So eventually there'll be a battery that just lasts longer, and you can download that. And they're constantly making little adjustments to how the battery is optimized.
Well, this was a longer than usual Geek Peek, so we should probably transition over to our topic for tonight. So, I think one of my favorite things in gaming is a good character creator. like sitting down at the beginning of a game and making a dude or a gal or whatever you want to make can be some of the most fun a game has to offer. There are games where the only thing I've done is make my character. Because after that, I stopped caring. I would just love to sit down and talk with you guys about some of your favorite memories in character creation, the games that you think offer the best character customization, and also just like fashion and style in games and how they change your experience in terms of like giving a little bit of your personality into what your options. Like, you can spend an hour and a half designing your guy in Skyrim, but all the clothes are kind of the same, right?
Right.
But Pokemon, you have very few options, but there's a bunch of clothing options in some of the newer ones. And you're playing Fortnite and you have hundreds of unlockable skins and options. You can be running around with Rick and Morty characters and Alien and Star Wars all on the same team.
They have. I'm just gonna kind of piggyback off of where you're at in that, because Fortnite had a couple character like base models, and as you played, you could unlock pieces for it and basically completely customize your own unique version of each of those models to do just yours. But the trick was, once you set it, like, it was set. Once that was done, you couldn't go back and do any re-edits later.
Oh,
but you forever had that character in your library.
So what's your guys' earliest memory of character creators? Because there's one that stands out tremendously for me.
Probably Morrowind.
Okay.
Like, creating my... either Morrowind or Knights of the Old Republic.
See, I didn't play a lot of Coder, but I do remember, like, around when Oblivion came out, I really wanted to play Morrowind, so I fired it up on a crappy laptop. It never worked right, but I loved the idea of, like, picking where your character's from, all the different backstories, creating that, like, custom class, altering your stats, and that portion of the game always worked on my laptop. So I had more time making characters than I did playing the actual game.
Yeah. Either that or before then playing like, and this is like minimal character customization, right? Like, you're a blob on a screen basically, but like Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale, like
sure,
those old Dungeons and Dragons games, those had like, you could make a character, but it was like super basic and not very like high resolution on it. And I'm sure there was some before that, but trying to think of when it definitely was on PC for me. Console gaming hadn't quite really given you those options.
I think I was fascinated by PC in that regard, because, I mean, titles like The Sims would come out, and you would spend all that time making your little family and building the houses and stuff, but the game that, like, drove into me, I like this system, Soul Calibur 3. Soul Calibur 3 not only includes a character customizer that's fairly robust for the time, but it also had, like, probably 20 unique fighting styles that they made specifically for the character creators, and then they would take the character creator like pieces and make these like like special style characters. So for example, your greatsword had a guy who you could use in the regular versus mode if you wanted to, or you could make a character using that style, and you could even make characters in Soul Calibur 3 with other character styles, like the main cast. So you could get a guy who fight like Nightmare, you could get a guy who fought like Mitsurugi or Talim or what have you, and it would just adopt that animation set. And so I spent hundreds of hours playing Soul Calibur 3's character creator, playing through the story. Even though it was lame, I loved making my own little cast of like mercenaries, and I made all these different stories and stuff with them. And so this system actually helped solidify the fantasy writing I was learning to do in late high school and early college. Like, if I wanted to visualize a character, I would often just go open Soul Calibur 3. Later, the same I would do with the subsequent Soul Calibur releases. But generally, that system, like, I burned through like 3 copies of this game on the PS2. It was life-changing as far as like how I adore these systems. I really get excited when somebody posts a character that's like exceptionally well made. Like, it's so cool, especially now, because, there's a lot of different variables you can mess with.
I remember that happening with, I think, the most recent Soul Calibur, I think 6.
Mm-hmm.
When that came out, people were noting it was a pretty robust and, like, a lot of options, and you could stretch those options for some pretty interesting results for character creation. But people were like making SpongeBob characters. Like someone did like a really excellent stuff. Squidward that made the rounds. Me and my friends rented that game specifically to make our own just horrible looking monstrosities and then make them fight. I think in the past I'd done the same for like professional wrestling games where I wasn't really interested in buying or playing the game long term. I just wanted one night of just making goofy looking dudes just slapping each other in a ring.
That's another good point.
Yeah, I think some of the earliest character creators I did were in wrestling games.
Like being able to take your character through an entire like season or something, even in some of the football games too.
Yeah, I want to say it was like WWE SmackDown, one of those versions from PS2, and then I think Def Jam, like the rapper wrestling thing.
Yeah, I remember.
I forgot about that. That just came out of fucking like the weeds. Shit.
The Tony Hawk games had character creation as well.
Yeah, I fucking forgot about that too.
Yeah, according to a quick Google search, Fight for New York had character creation, but once like character creation hit fighting games in a big way, arguably with stuff like Soul Calibur 3, Mortal Kombat Armageddon, you started seeing it everywhere. Like every fighting game wanted a character customizer. Even in-house, Tekken would have the ability to just customize the outfits of the main cast, which they never really went through the effort of making a full-on character creator for that game. But the fact that you could put like Jin or Kazuya in kitty ears or whatever was just kind of a weird, fun little thing to do.
Yeah, I think this goes all the way back to Tales of Symphonia. It's been a long time since I've played, but the Tales of game, as you play through the game, you unlock different costume accessories.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can give someone rabbit ears or sunglasses or whatever, just like little cosmetics that don't really change anything. But in the newer games, at the very least, they render in cutscenes with those.
Hilarious.
And in the current one, Tales of Arise, right now, one of the main characters has this like iron mask, and part of it is broken off. So half of his face you can see, and half of it is covered by this iron mask. So he has one eye that's not covered. Well, one of the cosmetic items is an eye patch, and it happens to be the left side, because apparently there's left and right side eye patches. And so it happened to be the side that's bare. So now in every cutscene, he's just like both eyes are just covered all the time, and he's just like looking around. I always try to make my like characters silly, and which is interesting because I remember growing up, particularly as like a teenager or even through my early 20s, I would try to make the most badass looking guy.
Or
I would spend like an hour and a half,
or like role play it.
Yeah, trying to make an hour and a half of trying to make it look like me. That's what I did with my first playthrough of like Dragon Age. I tried to make me as like a dwarf, right? Like,
oh yeah, well, of course.
I wanted to be the character in the game, but now I'm just making monstrosities and making people go, "Why did you show me this?"
The theme is pompadours, which is one of my favorite things.
Yeah, if there's a pompadour and you can make it pink or purple, that it's on every character I make now. Monster Hunter.
See, that's funny, because I love making a character that looks like they would exist in universe. Like for Monster Hunter, and typically it depends on how much time I want to put into a character creator, which arguably is not very long these days. Half the time I just give him red hair, blue eyes, and be like, yep, there he is. And so in Monster Hunter, it's really cool because your character is rendered in cutscenes, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And so I think that in particular really elevated custom designers.
Yeah, I guess I make it my goal to undermine the original design choices of the game. And if I can change the tone of a scene by just making my character dumb looking. But the most recent example being Street Fighter 6 demo.
Yep.
Just dropped a couple days ago. And I hadn't even finished my character yet. I think I was like 10 minutes in, and I was going, "Oh, this is going to be good." And I called you,
laughing,
and I couldn't even talk.
I literally answered the phone and said hello and just giggles. Couldn't even say it was Joe. I mean, I knew because of caller ID, but it was really funny.
I was just laughing, and so I asked you, I'm like, "Have you fired up the Street Fighter 6 demo yet?" And you were like, "No, I haven't had a chance to yet." I'm like, "It's got a character creator," and you went, "Oh no." And I was telling you that, little gamer and I were just laughing, having a good time. And then I sent you some pictures and you were like, hell yeah.
It's the most absurd thing you've ever seen. And what's interesting about Street Fighter 6 is there is a mechanical situation going on. Like, if you're a bigger character, your speed will be decreased. Or if you have long limbs, your reach will be extended. I'd hate to imagine coming into an online lobby and fighting whatever the hell you made. I'm like, I don't know whether to expect Dalsim punches or lightning kicks or what. But that's an interesting jumping off point, because a lot of what we've talked about so far has been primarily like giving you the flavor or the visuals of a character. But there are a lot of games where customization is directly impacted by the mechanics at work. So, like we're saying for Street Fighter, picking a larger character slows you down, and, those choices end up mattering in the gameplay. And the earliest example I can think of this, aside from Soul Calibur's, like, weapon system and being able to choose those different styles, is Mortal Kombat Armageddon had a whole, like, combo system where every single move you did could be interchanged. And so there was a crazy amount of customization. And, like, I ended up doing some research on the competitive scene for this game. Nuts. Like, people could string together just absurd moves. Like, the amount of fidelity that this system had is pretty astounding, even though it's fairly rudimentary when you look at it now. A lot of, same with most Mortal Kombat games, but a lot of the, like, normal actions don't have as much impact as what you would expect for a fighting game. But just the idea of being able to tailor your mechanical experience through a character customizer, like, that's really fascinating to me.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I don't think I ever got into that side of Armageddon because I don't think I played it that much. Right. Or maybe the only thing I've played is like the PlayStation 2 demo disc that happened to have it on there.
Oh yeah.
But there's a lot of games out there, some notable ones. Like, for a long time, I didn't really saw the cover art for Mass Effect or Mass Effect 2. And so I, made my guy in Mass Effect. And then I would randomly see the box art somewhere and be like, who the hell is that guy? Because my Shepard did not look like box art Shepard at all. It took me a little while later. I realized I had basically made Captain Kirk from Star Trek in a lot of ways. But yeah, it's just like one of those things where I associated my character with the game so much that I forgot that Shepard had an original design. Because when you look at some of these other games that have character creation or character creators, like Skyrim, there isn't like a character on the cover art. There's like I think on some of the cover arts, there's like the basic like Viking kind of guy.
Yeah, he's wearing all the Nord iron armor.
Right,
generally.
But that's more
He's
representative. That's more representative of the realm.
Yeah,
that you're in the game. It's not necessarily your player character.
Right. I think there's a disadvantage to that too, like storytelling wise.
In Mass Effect, it's like this is the main. It's just Commander Shepard on the box art, and my guy, because I think I got a digital copy as an apology for buying Dragon Age 2. Like they're like, thanks for buying that. Dragon Age 2. Here's a copy of Mass Effect 2. I'm like, sweet, free game. And that's sorry. So I never saw the box art. I just played the game, made my guy, and played it. And that was how I got confused with that.
So a lot of games end up being like, we talk about the end game of Monster Hunter and the end game of Dark Souls being fashion, or in Dark Souls case sometimes PvP. And this is where I think Zach probably has more expertise, because Destiny follows a similar like frame of mind. But there's a lot of games
around, Guardian.
Yeah. There's a lot of games that have that element. So is that something that you like find yourself pursuing at all, Zach?
Yeah, honestly. So before you farmed up your armor specifically to do whatever you needed to do, they didn't really have armor stats. They just had like perks. Now they have like stats, so you need different copies of the armor to like stat build if you want to get like really micromanagey. But the biggest trick is the last like season and some change, or not season and some change, the last like expansion. So like sometime around Witch Queen or a little before, because there was a couple seasons we didn't play. They added in that all the armor you've ever picked up, you can now make a transmog of.
Ooh.
So any piece of armor since you've played now is in your collections. You can now you do these quests for like an older vendor that kind of isn't in there anymore. Ada 1, she was the one for Black Armory, which was one of the big first expansions, like first like little expansions. She, like, the Black Armory is not around anymore, so she's still there in the tower, but they just kind of turned her area into this like hyper-threaded loom. So she basically has this area where she takes all this like crazy material and just reprints you a cosmetic version of your armor.
That's exceptionally cool, and
And
I
it's
wish
not
that
an-
more games had that.
And it's not an armor that you have to like have in your inventory. You literally just you unlock it and it becomes something you can just go copy paste onto my armor.
Well, that's a nice touch.
Yeah, so
Monster Hunter did something similar with the layered armor, where you can
Yeah.
have something that's all just cosmetics, and it doesn't necessarily affect your stats. It's almost like a Photoshop layer over what you're currently wearing.
yeah, and that's honestly how this works too, because it does nothing to your stats at all. You just
I love that.
And then of course you have like the fucking 10,001 shaders, and they all work differently with different armor, and it gets kind of wild, kind of fast. So you get some really cool looking things, and to grow on that, because I think the end game for every big like something like that, when you get into any kind of MMO space, is your dress up.
Yep.
How you dress is the ultimate end game at the end. Like,
because at that point you're playing socially, and
Yeah.
so if you've done all the things in the game and you want to just play with friends, why not look your best, or why not look a particular way you want to? Like, I totally understand that mentality and that approach to the game.
Yeah.
and they added a commendation system this season for Lightfall, to where like at the end of like Crucibles or Vanguard strikes or Gambit matches or raids and stuff like that, you get an extra screen that shows all the Guardians standing there and their name underneath, and you can pick them and give them a commendation. And they have curated commendations for each type of activity, but they just recently added best dressed to all the categories. So at the
people
end you can
want that.
give somebody like you did a great job, and then you can also look at somebody and be like, you didn't do a great job, but you looked like fire.
to like keep going with this, it's amazing how fashion driven like Halo and Team Fortress 2 are.
Same
'Cause
situation, online space.
You can unlock hats or different skins and color customizations. Like
The armor.
I remember, I don't know if Halo still is fashion driven, but I remember Halo Reach, how your armor looked mattered.
Yep.
People spent time and money and things trying to unlock certain skins or certain materials or colors to get the perfect look for what they wanted their Spartan to look like. And, even me, who's not typically fashion driven in a game, and Monster Hunter, if there's a cool looking piece of armor, I'm going to grind for that armor.
Yep.
I care more about how cool my guy looks in Monster Hunter than the stats. Now, not to say that I ignore the stats completely. Like, I'm not going to, for the sake of fashion, I'm not going to just like run in with just like a bad matchup if I can help it.
Right.
But if I don't have to take off my cool hat, I'm not going to.
That's where the layered armor benefit comes from. And granted, in Monster Hunter, it's not as straightforward as it is in Destiny, because it's separate
'Cause it's
upgrade and
Capcom.
building paths. So it takes resources, all that kind of thing. But you touched a little bit on the dubious part of it, is that a lot of publishers are exploiting this general need to look cool in a video game. And that's where we end up with things like the giant wave of microtransactions following things like Overwatch. Into Fortnite, into even Destiny has got a lot of like monetization issues with how it doles out its visuals.
For sure. And it's like really unfortunate that they've tapped into that in a way that is unhealthy.
It's predatory.
Yeah. I guess the last thing I want to bring up is there was a trend where everybody did character customization. I didn't even think about it until about halfway through our conversation tonight.
Oh, sure.
And if you've been watching the document, I added it to the document and made it like 60-point font because I can't believe I forgot this happened. But when the Wii came out and everyone was making their me, like I never would have guessed, like sitting in the living room with my grandmother making her me and her being like, no, that's not what my hair looks like. You know, she wanted her Mii to look like her. So she took the controller and she did it because she wanted it to be a specific way.
That every single family member in the house had a Mii.
Yeah. And then, you know, you'd get together with friends and you'd just be like, what happens if I take the eyebrows and flip them upside down and then put them all the way down under the mouth? Like, people did some really crazy and creative things with the... Like, there was arguably limited options, but you could do a lot with those options. And people made all sorts of Mii's. And then during the Wii U era, you could send those to people.
Yep. Which touches on the last thing I want to bring out before the conclusion, is any of these systems where you can download or share somebody else's creation, I think is an immediate benefit. Because in, I believe, Soul Calibur 6, and even some versions of Smash Brothers, maybe the newest one, where you could go to the like an area of the game that had like all these different community creations, and you could filter it based on, you know, is it another character being emulated? Is it, you know, a really cool character or a cute character or whatever? And so you could download like weird Mii brawlers or like that, like a SpongeBob on on Soul Calibur. And one of the funniest memories I have is I think it was either on the 3DS or the Switch version of Smash Bros. I went to the marketplace. This is an entirely free system, which is how I prefer it. And I downloaded a character called Petch. It was just an ugly peach, and it was the funniest thing to me because it had this like really weird, like Mii gross, ugly face, and it was a brawler, so it beat the heck out of you. But man, there's some really funny things.
The funniest ones we had, because you know that was the other thing, is Wii Sports used your Mii, so people cared.
Oh yeah.
But one of the funniest ones we made was just one called Tiny Face.
It's
just the face. Just the face was real small.
That's like a Rick and Morty bit. Or
something. The weird makes me think like of the Derpules from Smite.
The head was normal, but the face aspects were just like the whole face was just like small and in the center of the head.
That's
it was
hysterical.
Just so funny.
So given the opportunity, I would download or put in a code for Tiny Face because it's hysterical.
Or Big Head in like the NFL Blitz games or whatever.
Oh, sure.
But, you know, I remember putting my Mii in my Wiimote and then bringing it to friends' places because I wanted my Mii in the Wii Sports we were going to play that night.
Yeah, if I'm going to go bowling, I'm going to go bowling with me.
Yeah.
And he's going to get points, and it's going to be great.
But, you know, you have all these, like, I think this sort of spawned gaming and character creation and customization into, like, the greater mindset of society. So now it's, you look at all of the, like, mobile games and Facebook games that have, you can unlock or create your little character, or games that are through a specific service that all use the same, like, architecture for character building, so you can have your one character through all of these different games. None of us even touched on games like The Sims.
No, we did in the beginning of the episode briefly.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
But just like the amount of time people spent trying to make their family in The Sims.
Well, even Spore, like when Spore was first demoed, and that game was in development hell for years. But that character developer is still actively being used because it was a really good building tool.
Yeah.
I love looking at these Reddit forums that are all about utilizing these systems, and they'll be like, I made a Charizard and Spore.
When that game was coming out, I got a preview disc of just the character creator.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it was a selling point.
The game wasn't in it. You just made aliens.
Yep.
Or made your creature in this, like, character creator, this monster creator, whatever you want to call it. That was the whole thing. And that's still arguably the best part of that game.
Yep.
Unfortunately. And that's the thing too, is like, as much fun as I had making my dude in Street Fighter 6, it's probably going to be a long time before I buy Street Fighter 6. And that's just because I'm not interested in fighting games as much. Like, it's fun to sit down for an afternoon with a couple of friends and play some Street Fighter. But I've got other fighting games. I'm not planning on being competitive.
You don't want to do the world tour thing where you walk around beating up people and learning
maybe
moves
eventually,
from masters?
But there's other games that I want to do that in first. Like, and especially in this year where I'm not buying new games, like other games like.
And Street Fighter 6 will be better next year than it is this year.
Most likely.
Hands down.
And that's the other part of it too, is like I know Diablo 4 is coming out, which is probably going to have some character customization and stuff, but
Yep.
I really want to wait until I see what the state that game comes out in.
Well, Baldur's Gate 3 you're getting, and that has a huge character creation component.
I cannot wait.
So you have to show us your monstrosities. When
If there's a
Baldur's
purple
Gate
pompadour, I'm going to have it.
comes out. How you gonna eat me, Mind Flare, when I've got this pompadour in the way?
Yeah, they're trying to like eat me, but just to get a pomp in the mouth.
Yeah. Oh.
I can't get to the brain because of the pump.
So is there any like particular ways we would want to see character creation improved? I mean, the ability to download it, I think, is a big one, and share it on social media quickly, like through a code or something that just like you put it in, it pops a character up.
Oh my gosh. If I can make it easy for someone else to just have my dude from Street Fighter 6 at home, like I'd be like, if I was coming to your place, Alex, and I'd be like, dude, download my dude so I can play at your house without having to like do some weird account exchange thing, or like if it was just available, that would be awesome.
So I think shareability is a big part of it. The ability to quickly like show off your character, I think, is another big component. So whether it's through a screenshot system like you see through the PS5, Switch, Xbox, whatever, just making that as easy as possible, I think, is really cool. And then the ability for your character to like be in cutscenes and be a permanent part of the game, not be like a superficial piece of it. Like I think that's another big component to why these things are successful. And then just having systems that like you can do more than what you might expect. So being able to manipulate shapes or connect things in certain ways, or upload your own images. Like we didn't even talk about customizable racing characters and cars and things like Forza, where you input your own images and stuff. All of that's fantastic. VR chat, we didn't talk about that either.
Yeah, well, remember when you could use like the Kinect camera to like take pictures of your face and put it in like NBA 2K whatever, and then you could be the basketball player.
But all of that stuff, I think, is like, there's a reason why character creators sometimes outlive their initial community, because Soul Calibur 6 is a great example of this. There's hundreds of thousands of people probably in that Reddit of just character creator. The amount of people playing that game at any given time is probably less than 10,000.
Yeah. Well, also just like the mainstay of like a good character creator is important to a game, but also, like you said, can outlast. And great example of this is like the McElroy series Monster Factory, where the whole point of the show on YouTube is to just make the weirdest looking thing they can in a character creator and then play the game for a bit with it.
I'm glad we eventually got to this, because your approach to it reminds me of Monster Factory, probably because you've seen a lot of it.
Yeah, it makes me laugh. It's funny. And like I said, I don't know if I mentioned it on the record yet, but my guy in Street Fighter 6 looks like a Looney Tunes villain, and he's just hanging out with Street Fighter characters, which, if you didn't know, don't look like Looney Tunes. And so there's this huge design disconnect, but they let me do it. Like, if you want to blame anybody for this creation, Capcom let me do it.
Can't wait
and
to
therefore
see
I did
those moments. But yeah, and being able to interact with other player creators, whether it's an MMO where that's, everybody's got their own avatar, or it's in a fighting game where you can fight character creator versus character creator in an online scenario, so that you're like discovering there's like an element to it, right? Where like, oh, that guy looks really cool, or oh, that you can make your nose that big. Who knew?
Well,
like,
I'm
builds
looking
off your own what you're doing, right?
I'm sure like
cool.
the big tournament scene is not going to allow these custom characters.
No, it'll be silly tournaments.
But
for sure.
I'm looking forward to the weird meta of whoever like digs into the data on like what does the ultimate perfect Street Fighter character end up looking like. It's probably more in terms of like body type than it is like specific characterizations and stuff. But I'm curious if the meta is going to be like, dude, guys with the biggest hands and the skinniest arms just kick butt in Street Fighter. Like if you don't got big hands in Street Fighter, forget about it.
We were laughing because you can change the size of your buttocks, and I'm like, oh, you can have yourself get that big old cake, or you can have Hank Hill butt.
Flat.
Just nothing.
Well, we didn't even there's so many things we haven't even touched on, like Xbox
Right.
360 had the avatars
Oh,
that you could
yeah.
customize and like give them different shirts and stuff for
You could earn
microtransaction.
shirts. That was really cool.
You can customize your character in Cyberpunk,
Yep.
which has one of the weirdest character creators I've ever seen. Like the things you could customize versus the things you couldn't customize were so confusing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can change the length and color of certain hair, but not other hair. I'm like, this makes zero sense. Why can I customize this but not this?
Right.
Why do I have 100 colors here and 4 here? Like this is Cyberpunk, where some people have robot heads.
Right.
Why am I being limited on my leg hair color or whatever like the case may be? It was just, I remember creating my character in there just with my buddy on a Discord call, streaming it to him, and we're both just like, wait, what? Why are you being limited here of all places?
But I think arguably, in most instances, a character creator enhances pretty much every genre of video game.
Definitely makes it so much more engaging for you to just be stuck to, regardless.
Yeah.
That said, well, I mean, that even like Legend of Zelda like has some customization,
Right.
and what you can pick different colors of armor, or have different outfits. Particularly in Breath of the Wild, I'll be curious to see what they do with Tears of the Kingdom. But like, could you imagine character customization in like Wind Waker?
Yeah, there's certain things where it doesn't really work out, right? Like, I love a crafted experience, but, I mean, there's certain characters who will enter a ring in Soul Calibur and they physically break the game and slow down the frame rate because there's too many things. And arguably, like, a created character can weaken a narrative. Like, if you had a Commander Shepard who was a character instead of your character, it could have been a stronger narrative for that particular angle. But because your character is a created character, they made the side characters very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different ways to go about it, but usually having the option enhances what you're playing.
At least some sort of like fashion option. A recent example for me is Far Cry 6. Not a whole lot in terms, not in terms of like making your character. Your character, you basically have like a few choices in character customization, but you have a decent number of like clothing and style options.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a stupid expensive keyboard because I needed to replace my old one, and I wanted something really nice. So I spent the extra money and got a nice Corsair mechanical keyboard, linear switches, like the whole works. It came with a free copy of Far Cry 6. And in the game, it came with an in-game exclusive hat. You damn straight I wore that hat the entire time I played that game. I'm like, this digital hat cost me $300. I'm wearing it.
There's a similar joke in the Street Fighter 6 demo that you probably didn't get to, where they walk you through the basics of all the different things, including the like clothing shop, and you don't get to buy anything, but they force you to buy a hat. And you like walk out with just the hat, and he's like, doesn't really match the outfit, does it? And the other guy's like, nah, I'm not digging it.
Yeah, I did get that far. I did at least buy the hat.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to see what when I saw that quest, I was about to turn it off, and then I saw, ooh, I might be able to see what some of the options were, and I'm like, oh, it's just a tutorial.
It ends shortly after that. It gives you a stinger trailer.
But it was funny because every time we jumped into Far Cry 6, my buddy was like, hey, nice hat.
All right, well, let's get into the wrap-up, fellas.
Yeah, no bonus segment today, boys. I knew we'd have plenty to talk about. And after all the work I put into the last one, I needed a time off.
We should invite people to share their favorite custom characters with us on socials when we post this. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
From any game, really.
And yeah, it doesn't matter. Show us your cool things or absurd things, and we'll talk about them maybe next time at the beginning of an episode.
Yeah, that would be great. That'd be fun. I'd love to
do it on a stream or something.
Yeah, or make a tier list of fan creator.
That's really good.
Yeah, let's do it. If you've got a favorite customized character from any game, please share it. Cool, like looks just like you, weird, whatever the case may be. If you put some time and effort into creating something in a character creator, let us know what it is and why you love it. Like why you spent the time doing it, or what motivates you to make a character like that. For me, I just want to make something goofy and makes me laugh. For others, it's that realism. I want to be, when I look at the game, I want to see me. And for some people, it's just, I want to create something cool. When I look at the screen, I want to see a cool character that I made.
The avatar you play as is different for, like, people have different reasons for playing what they play.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. I love the fact that expression like that exists in the era that I happen to exist in humanity.
Good stuff.
All right. Well, that's all for today, folks. And if you want to hang out with us even more or check out some of the more extensive things that we're working on, check out foreverclassicgames.com. That is the anchor point for everything that we do. We've got some videos in the pipeworks. Some of the major games we'll be taking a look at include titles like Tears of the Kingdom, that new Zelda game that's coming out soon, Final Fantasy 16. We might touch on Jedi Survivors, and then Street Fighter 6 is a given if that comes out this year. And any Monster Hunter that happens to crop up between now and then. But yeah, hit us up on Facebook, Twitter. We're pretty much anywhere you might expect to find us, and just search for Forever Classic Games and you'll find us. And we would certainly love to have the support right now on YouTube. There's a subscriber limit that we're trying to hit of 1,000. Having that 1,000 gives us a few more options on the platform, so we're really hoping to hit that. So if you like what we're doing, even if you don't watch our videos at all, jump over, throw a subscribe, have Grandma down the road subscribe with us. It would really help us out. But until next time, thank you so much for listening to the Forever Classic Podcast, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
See ya.